Today, I am so excited because I'm going to be talking to Greg Trauthwein, and he is in a space that I'm passionate about. I love everything with the water and marine. And so he's going to tell us about his industry. Because as we know, to be successful, we have to know the industries we are in, and we must contact the people that are most interested in our products and services. But before we get started, my name is Donna Peterson, and you are listening to the B2B Marketing Excellence Podcast. I go around the world talking with business leaders and marketing executives about what is working, what's happening in their industry, and what do they foresee for the future. These tips and tactics is what's going to help you grow your business year after year. So let's jump in. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Donna. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. Like I said, I am passionate about this space and I love scuba diving. Every time I'm underneath the water, I feel like it's another world. And when I was younger, I wanted to be a marine biologist, but I wasn't that smart in the science area. So had to change direction. And I'm wondering, how did you get into this space?
Okay, well, Donna, that's a great question, and it's actually one of the interview questions that I use regularly across everything that we do in maritime, offshore energy, subsea port, and logistics. My story, it's the way that many great things happen. It's pure dumb luck. I ask this question a lot, and I get this salt in my veins as a common response. But personally, I grew up in Ohio. And while I was close to the Ohio River, unless you're front and center, you have family and friends in maritime, being knowledgeable about the maritime industry could be as close as being knowledgeable about being an astronaut. Mm-hmm. So basically, grew up in Ohio, graduated from the Ohio State University with a degree in journalism, and I moved to New York City. I worked for a very large publishing firm that was not related in any way to maritime, but then through a person that I know, I got introduced to Maritime Reporter and Engineering News in 1992, and 30 years later, here I am.
Wow, how interesting. So it wasn't that this was a space you were interested in, it was more the marketing part that brought you to this.
Yeah, it was interesting. I've always been interested in publishing. I mean, publishing and information and writing, that's always been my forte. Of course, today I'm responsible for a heck of a lot more than that across all of our publications, our websites, our e-news services, all of our media. But the core of what I do was communicating. And in the written form, I still think I do that quite well. So that was the nugget of what brought me in. When I joined Maritime Reporter 30 years ago, if you would have asked me then, you're going to be here 30 years from now? I would say absolutely not. I would have said I'll be somewhere else in the world. I'll be doing something else. But again, once I got into it, I guess I quote unquote got that salt water in my veins, because this industry is packed with a lot of interesting individuals and a lot of interesting stories.
Yeah, definitely. But you're responsible for, I believe, 4 B2B publications, 10 websites, and over a dozen e-newsletters. I'm sorry, just saying that is like, I'm wondering, how do you keep it all straight? And how do you continue to keep your content engaging?
Well, by you just saying that too, I think I want to go and ask for a raise. But it does sound like a lot. It sounds like a lot for sure. And on some days it is a lot, and on some days it's just the way it's our business. So, it's very trite to say. I ask the question all the time as well. But first and foremost, I'm surrounded by some great people, because the people that work for us in-house directly, to the dozens of freelancers that I use globally, I can travel for very long stretches. In fact, I literally was just on a 4-week travel swing. I slept in my bed at home 2 nights in a 4-week period, but I can sleep at night knowing that the job is getting done. Personally, I think the recent pandemic highlighted more than ever the value of that personal relationship and that personal visit.
Yeah.
I'm endlessly curious about the people that run different businesses in our space, and most of our titles have an engineering context. So you have a strong flow of inventor types continuously. And
Hmm.
I've always said that there's a great story in every person in every company, most every person in most every company, and our job is to actually find it. So, keeping it fresh, keeping it relevant, it's time consuming, it's old school, but when I look back over the 30 years that I've been doing this, the absolute best stories that I personally have ever delivered have always come from a visit to that shipyard, to that vessel, to that offshore installation, or to that office somewhere around the world.
When you're talking, all I'm thinking about is I get him. I get Greg. We're on the same page, and I feel everything is about relationships now and understanding other people, the positions they're in, the industries they're in. And it makes everything more exciting when you can dive deep and really get to know people. And for you, then you're able to give and content that will resonate with your readers. And with me, when I do my marketing, it's the same thing. If you do your marketing and you think about more building a relationship versus just making a sale, it's different.
No, it's totally different. I mean, just case in point. Again, I referenced the pandemic, and that shock to the world and business that is 2 years and is still kind
Yeah.
of lingering on. One of the things that really helped me when we went to this format, to this Zoom, Teams, Google Meet style of world. I had 28 years where I've been running around the world and I made all those contacts. So for the most part, if I needed to get to somebody, I could get to them. So
Mhm.
but what I'm finding now is a lot of the relationships that you're making on these video meets, and trust me when I say I treasure them, we use them at speed, but it's just not that same. It's not the same. It's not the same as meeting someone, sharing a drink, sharing a coffee, sharing a meal, and actually talking to them and learning more about their business.
I totally agree. I just really have amped up our in-person meetings with people, traveling all around the world, seeing people, because you're right. When you sit down and you talk to someone, maybe your objective is to work out a marketing plan for the current year, but so much more comes out of that meeting. You start to figure out, how do these people tick? What's their personality? What are their challenges? And also just find some commonalities in their personal life with you. Maybe they're, for me, a downhill skier, I love the snow. Then you know what? We're friends for life.
That's awesome.
But those little things, when you get those commonalities, is when you can build those deep relationships that will last, like for you, over 30 years in your space, and they probably pay off.
And now it is. It's even the tiny things. It is literally the little things. The handwritten note, the thank
Mhm.
you. I remember one CEO I met with. I literally went into his office, and he was a Pittsburgh Steelers fanatic. I mean,
Okay.
fanatic. And I graduated from Ohio State, so I know something a little bit about football fanaticisms. But I was in his office. He had everything, but he didn't have. And I happened to be just looking online. I found a little Mean Joe Green bobblehead. $15. I bought it, I sent it to him, and it forged one of the closest relationships that I've had in business through 30 years. Just by a $15 bobblehead, just by noticing what's in their office, what they're interested in, and following up on that.
Yeah. I did that last year, matter of fact, with someone. I sent them a book. We had both been talking about this one specific topic. And I said, oh, I just read this book. I really think you'll be interested. And I went and I bought it for them and I sent it. And they're like, oh my gosh, that was so thoughtful of you to think of me. And it was outside the holidays, because I know right now everyone's getting a bunch of different gifts from different vendors and clients, but this was different. It was like, I forgot, May or something. So it was really far away from the holidays and it was just out of the blue. And I think that's kind of nice when you do those simple things.
Absolutely.
So now what do you see as like the biggest marketing challenge you have?
Well, I mean, it's interesting, and that one that kind of gets me thinking on a lot of different levels because personally, we are a privately owned fourth generation family company. It's not my family.
Mhm.
We were founded in New York City in 1939.
Wow.
And, my boss, the owner of our company, John O'Malley, said many years ago, before there was the websites, before there was emails, he said, and basically when we were only operating in the maritime space, he said, the good news is Time Inc. isn't interested in the maritime space. The bad news is Time Inc. isn't interested in the maritime space. So when I started, the landscape was pretty similarly sized B2B companies competing hard against each other.
Mhm.
That, with the advent of big tech, has completely changed. And when I look at what I did 30 years ago to what I do today, I do maybe a lot of the same things, but I do them completely differently because now, we're not just banging with the B2B publishers in our space. We're banging around with the Googles, the Facebooks,
Yeah.
the LinkedIns. They've had an impact on our content. They've had an impact on our advertiser dollars as well. So, don't get me wrong, the big tech platforms, we tap them with force to build and maintain our brands as well. And a good case in point is on LinkedIn, which I consider to be one of our strongest social media outlets
Yeah.
to draw people in. It's a serious business site rather than quote unquote Facebook.
Right.
But like on LinkedIn, so we have brands in maritime, offshore energy, subsea, ports and logistics. So on LinkedIn, we have it's called the Maritime Group, and we have 200,000 members that we've drawn in, and we use that to for our various ends as far as just reaching out and building our communities. So
Yeah.
one of the biggest challenges that I see really is and basically I've been hearing a lot from our clients is breaking above the clutter.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, as I said, when we started this business in 1939, and by nature, we're a conservative bunch.
Mhm.
And while we keep up with the latest technologies, I fall back on what I consider to be the core to our business, which is our audience.
Right.
So, we work and we spend a lot and we build and maintain that tight, targeted, qualified, audited audience in every sector that we serve. And
Mhm.
it's funny actually. Actually, it's funny. I had a conversation. This was years ago when Twitter and all these social platforms were just blowing up. And I took one of our stories and I put it on Twitter. And I was sitting there, I was playing Scrabble with my son at the time, and my phone was bing, bing, bing. I'm like, oh man! I said, that post is blowing up. He goes, why? How many hits you get? I'm like 10. And he said, so I got the requisite eye roll and oh yeah, right, Dad. And then I think he actually probably ended up beating me at Scrabble as well. So, in that context, a cumulative magazine circulation of 42,000, as we have reported in Engineering News, that
Right.
seems like a spit in the ocean. But it is a core audience that design, builds, owns, and maintains a global fleet of ships, and we protect that closely. So, as the world increasingly picks up speed, particularly on the technology side, I kind of still lean back on those traditional values, and our audience is at the core of that.
That's very important because as you've seen with publishers, there's been some issues over the years. Many publishers kind of lost their way. And at times they either sold or folded because they couldn't keep going. And I think it is because they lost sight of really their specific audience. Because if you start to, and it's easy to get caught up with all the shiny objects and running around saying, oh my gosh, we've got to do this and we got to do that, and you forget about some of the traditional ways that we all did marketing, how we used to grow the magazine subscriptions. And it's important to keep sight of that now and go back to those old roots and show the audience that you truly care about them. You want to keep them informed with the information they need to do their job better. And those are the publications that will flourish into the future.
And I mean, it's the eternal question. Again, like I said, we're both on the content, both on an IT
Yeah.
perspective, because we've become as much of an IT company as anything. And when
Mhm.
you look at dealing at kind of, when I say battling or dealing or, competing with, but, you have big tech, and it's a reality. It's not just a reality for me, it's a reality for everyone.
Mhm.
So yes, they absolutely have a scale and an ability that, as me sitting here, that we'll never have. But what we have is that audience, and that keen knowledge, that really insightful knowledge of business, that I think without an incredible amount of hard work and, really personal connections, I don't know that they'll get. But that's just my 2 cents.
And also, when you're talking about your numbers, you're not looking to have millions and millions of kind of general contacts and subscribers. You want to stick to those people that are in your space, that are interested in your magazine, because that makes all your marketing channels more valuable for the advertisers, because they know that they're going to be speaking directly to the audience they need to.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny, and again, just going back to when I started, before there was the internet, I'm sure you remember.
We are not that old.
I know. Unfortunately, my body tells me otherwise. But I'm sure you remember the bingo cards in the magazines. For more information
Yeah.
on this product, circle number 342, and
Yeah.
it was awesome. I mean, it was spectacular, because you get a bunch of leads in. They were tangible. You put your hands on them. You send them out to your advertiser, and everybody is happy. Now we have all the electronic means and methods to track when you spend with us, when you run a content program with us, when you have a video, when you have this, that, and the other thing. We have all the metrics that we can share, but it's just different. It's more immediate. And, to your point, again, the common refrain that and I'm sure anybody in this kind of B2B space here is, oh, I don't need to advertise with you. I do Google
Yeah.
words. And
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes you really got to get over when you're trying to sell your brand, if somebody just looks at that gross number and they're like, oh my God, they generated, 9 million hits, blah, blah, blah. It's got to be better. But what are those 9 million hits getting you? And I would contend, and again, you have to do it on a case by case basis. And that's what makes it difficult. That again, a smaller response, or a response from a qualified audited audience, is going to be a more targeted spend, is going to be a more targeted
Yeah.
audience for our clients as well.
Well, don't they say most businesses, you get 80% of your business from only 20% of your customers?
Yeah.
And that's because they're that target area. And I've run into the issue where I've gone into clients and like, oh, Donna, okay, we did this many emails and we did this many social posts, and these are all the leads we got. And I said, well, what about the branding? We don't care about branding. We only care about leads. What do you don't care about the branding? You have to care about the branding. And that's why it's important. I do a lot of work with industrial auctions, and it's so important for them to look at the marketing channels from industry specific publishers, because they don't want to waste their time going out to generic lists or doing Google ads or doing even LinkedIn Live, because first of all, it's time sensitive. So we've got to do it right away and get to our targeted area. But we want to know that the people are in the space, that they are a title that can make a decision to buy, and that they will be interested in the equipment up for sale. When you're trying to find that type of an audience, that's what's great about the files you have to offer, because we can pinpoint those people and promote right to them.
No, I mean, you're hitting right on a lot of points, because one of the tenets, and I'm sorry for hammering the same point, but the audience is important, and everything that we've done has been audited, and I'm even starting to see a lot of people kind of like not paying as much mind to magazine audits. And we're one of the original members of BPA. We've been members of BPA audits since like 1947.
Wow.
And when we renew our subscriptions in our circulation, it's by a company name, title. And you'll pull, and there might be a competitive entity that's audited, but when you pull it, you look at, basically they went to a catalog
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's so and I get it. I totally get it. And but again, we always bring it back. Like I said, we're a conservative company, so
Right.
maybe when things aren't rocking, maybe we don't fly as high. But
Mhm.
absolutely, when the rug gets pulled out and the world dies, we don't fall as far either. So we kind
Right.
of operate that middle space, and we kind of do it with the same philosophy and the principles that we started with.
And that's important. I have to tell you, I got a promotion the other day from another list vendor, and they came right in with their BPA statement. People are starting to realize how much weight a BPA statement holds, because if you're being audited on your circulation, you are accountable that you do have this many people who are in that president category, and you have this many engineers, and they're across, whether they're in operations or maintenance, or I don't know exactly how your BPA is broken out, but it's important for you to also send that BPA out to people. Say, just so you know, we are BPA audited, so that they understand that their subscribers are being checked, because there are some publishers, because they like to keep their numbers up, sometimes just buy compiled data and add to it so that their circulation stays up for their advertisers. And people have to be careful. That's not what you want, because when you're looking at that compiled, you don't know for sure, are those people really in your space? Because I bet you've had a lot of the data you have, people have self-reported it. Your subscribers told you, hey, I'm Donna Peterson. I am the CEO of this company. These are the things I'm interested in. When someone self-reports the information, the accuracy is much higher than if someone is just pulling together a compiled list.
Absolutely. As I say, the audience is key, and we still believe in the audit.
Yeah, good. Now, I have one other question I wanted to ask you about, and this was a video you did a while back. I think maybe it was a year and a half ago, and it was with Robert Ballard. Now, Robert Ballard, I know he doesn't want to be known for this. He was one of the explorers that discovered the Titanic. He also discovered hydroventing, correct? Hydrothermal venting, I think they call it. But in your interview with him, he told a very interesting story about being in the redwood forest and asking the person he was with, those trees are so tall, they're 350 feet tall, but their roots are only 6 feet. How do they not fall over? And that's when he was told, well, redwoods, their roots grow laterally, and then they grab on to other root systems, which gives them the strength to withstand wind and not blow over. I found that analogy to be very interesting, because it's relationship building. It's the networking we were talking about. And you build those strong relationships and networks, and that's what helps us all not fall over. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, thank you first and foremost for quoting a story of mine from a year ago, because that makes me feel that what I do on a daily basis that has some relevance. But
I
I
totally understand that. Sometimes I feel like I'm speaking to no one, and then someone will say something. I'm like, oh, yippee, you were listening.
yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, just case in point, Bob Ballard is like one of those people. You're talking about what keeps it fresh, what keeps it going. It's people like Bob Ballard, because perfect example. We had bought a magazine called Marine Technology Reporter back around 2005, and basically it actually was a newsletter that was printed on 11 by 17 paper and folded. And the person who was putting it out stopped doing it because it was too laborious. And I'm like, well, what's your circulation, or how many people are you going to?
Yeah.
And they came back, and I was like, don't kill it. We'll buy it.
Yeah.
So, we did what we do at the time. You create a website, you create a magazine, you create e-news, you create a brand around that, and you start selling it. And, I think I put out like a third edition or so. And Bob Ballard actually gave me a call. He was up at URI at that point.
Yeah.
And he had a new program, a new I forget it was his master's or a PhD program on telepresence technology. And basically it was about, there's a lot of cool stuff under the ocean.
Mm,
Not everybody can jump on a ship and go check it out and see it firsthand.
yeah.
Let's explore the use of technologies that can go out, sit there, pump the data back so everybody can learn about it. So, Bob has always been, for me, he's obviously an incredibly busy guy. I think he's done over 150 missions, at sea missions, endless font of information. But
I found his interview. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
no,
interrupt
go
you,
ahead.
but when you were talking about I found his interview interesting when you don't think about it. He goes, I dove and it took 5 hours to get down, to do 10 minutes of work, to go 5 hours back up. And you don't think about that. And as a scuba diver, I know, you have to go certain, but thinking about the depths he was going at for 5 hours. And he said, it was my commute, my commute to work.
No, it is. It's fascinating. And again, that's a perfect point, because the cost to send someone out to sea, the ship, the personnel, the equipment, the technology, everything, it's mind blowing. And that's kind of a factor that stops a lot of exploration. And again, another one of his quotes, and it was right in there, we were talking about sending like AUVs, autonomous robotic vehicles, out to do the job. And he's like, look, I like riding a horse, but I don't want to ride one to work every day. So, I mean, and that to me was perfect. But, and it comes back to, and I sound like a broken record to a degree, I think, but it comes back to that personal relationship. And, one of the great stories that I had, for about 8 years or so, my wife, Dawn, worked with us. And she worked on the sales side, and it was perfect because I was commuting in Manhattan. She was working from home, dialing for dollars, that type of thing. But we got to travel a lot together. And we were at a trade show, and she is absolutely spot on perfect for the sales connectivity issue, because we're walking to a show, and we walked up to a booth, and I'd known this guy literally 20 years. And she starts talking to him, and she's asking about his mother's new hip, asking about his dog, asking about the kids. And, I walked away from that, and I'm like, I've known this guy 20 years. I didn't know he had a mother. I didn't know he had a dog. And, and and that it kind of clicked with me to, because I'm usually kind of running a million miles an hour, to maybe just stop and think a little bit more, as well. So
it's a hard thing to do, though.
It is.
Because I even went to a networking event last night. It's a metal forming association. And I go in there and I'm talking about manufacturing and metal forming and this and that. And my colleague's with me, who ends up being my husband also. And all of a sudden I hear him, he's like talking about golf and golf courses they've been at and this and that. And I'm like, I have to learn better to just tone it down a notch and meet people on a personal level first versus like, okay, let's jump in and start talking about manufacturing and metalworking.
No, that's perfect. Like I said, I literally just got back from a 4-week trip. The last leg of that, I was in Denmark and Sweden. And one of our really big clients up in northern Denmark, on our subsea side, I went in, and I think for the first half an hour, we didn't talk about business. We didn't talk about ad programs. We didn't talk about content. We talked about our boats.
Do you find Europeans are more like that than people here in the United States, where they stop for a minute and do personal and then we talk about business?
No, I think it's flip of the coin. It's to me, it really doesn't matter where you're. And one of the great things about the job that I've had, that I've truly enjoyed, is I've traveled the globe continuously for 20 years. Now that's tiring to a degree, but it's also, you really get to meet a lot of different people in a lot of different walks of life, a lot of different cultures, and you kind of get to respect, the differences and the similarities too. So, but it does, it kind of comes back to that people thing. And, you asked about forming a bond.
Yeah.
Again, we're doing this on Zoom. We're not sitting in your office. We're not sitting in, somewhere doing, and that's fine. I'm sure we will one day.
Yes.
But when COVID hit and everybody went home, there was obviously a lot of economic uncertainty, and I say that from our perspective, but I know some of the biggest ship owners in the world. I know some of the biggest manufacturers in the world. Nobody really knew
Right.
how this was going to zig or zag. So, basically, I have a roster of more than 2 dozen content providers around the world, and that the first thing I did, I had to slash that. I had to really
Uh,
pare that back to the absolute core, and I started using this forum, this Zoom, this video to rapidly connect with people. And again, like I said, I had those previous connections that opened the door for me.
right.
But like the real power, and again, I got to tell you, when I got back from my little my little 4 week trek, I was tired. I was done. But it just kind of reminded me, it was about a year ago, whenever I set up these video calls. I have all these different markets that we serve, and literally in one day, I started really early in the morning in Shanghai. I went to Norway, I went to Israel, and I ended with Vancouver, BC. And I got 4 really key like meetings, interviews, literally almost around the world, literally in almost 8 hours.
Yeah.
So while that in-person touch is important, the efficiency, the technologies, we absolutely leverage them to the hilt because you can't be everywhere at one time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even when you're going into companies and you want to speak to their entire team, because I had something similar. I had a call with their entire team, but one person was in Russia, one was in France, one was in the UK, and here I am in the United States. But we all met together. We all got to talk and strategize where logistically for us all to meet in one spot, you're talking about a totally, you're talking about days out of the office, travel expenses, everything. Meanwhile, we spent 1 hour, got everything organized, and we clicked off and went on with our jobs.
No, it is. It's spectacular. And, again, going back to March 2020, when all
Yeah.
that, and I, off the top of my head, I know we support, with media partnerships, maybe 60 shows a year across all of our brands. How, the attendance, the booths, how many I do personally, I'm traveling quite a bit, but when all that came back in the house, you're like, wow, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of commitment. That's a lot of airfares. That's a lot of hotels. That's a lot
Right.
of.
Yes.
So, I mean, not just us, I'm starting to see also a lot of our clients are rethinking the way in which they market their companies kind of in person. And again,
Yeah.
I think it's critical. I think it's critical to be back out there, to the trade shows, to the conferences, to the personal visits.
Yeah.
But we're doing it differently as well. And I think you have to. I think it's an economic and a business imperative as well, because I can sit here and I can get around the world in 8 hours, where my recent, trek is
Yeah.
just, your days and a handful
Right.
of clients. And so it's important to have that mix, I guess, is what I'm getting
Yeah.
to.
Well, just like your marketing, people will say, oh, direct mail is dead, or they'll say, all you need is social media and all you need this. But no, you need a combination of all the different things. And I think just like meeting with clients, going to trade shows, some online trade shows are great, but you need to be in person at different exhibitions. You want to see pieces of equipment in action, seeing how it's working, hearing what other people are saying around you. I love going to trade shows. I think they're a wealth of information because as you walk through that exhibit hall, like I said, I can hear a conversation going over there that gives me so much information that I wouldn't get if I was just, zoning in on one thing on Zoom.
Absolutely.
So
And,
it's a combination.
yeah, no, and as I look at myself here on Zoom, I hope you appreciate my branding.
I
Gotta
do.
always be
Hey,
closing.
you're better than me. I'm just, world innovators. I really should get more of the innovators part in there, but
Quite
so
okay. Quite okay.
well, I thank you so much for your time today. It was very important for us to hear about, your publications, what you're doing to keep your content engaging and of interest to your readers. And of course, knowing that your audience is really the core of your business and your mission is to keep your audience strong and informed. So I thank you.
Okay. Well, no, I appreciate that. As I said, when we started out, I'm not used to being on this side of the table. I'm usually the one that's asking the question and watching people kind of sweat as they go along occasionally. But no, it was informative, and it was nice because it got me thinking about it's. I think it's always refreshing to think about your business, how you're doing it, and how you need to be doing it going forward.
Great. Well, you have a great day. Thank
Okay, you
you.
too, Donna. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the B2B Marketing Excellence Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss our next episode. And in the meantime, if you'd like to talk to me, please feel free to send me an email to dpeterson@worldinnovators.com. Till next time, have a great day.